Hey there foodies, and welcome back to our discussion of DBD's upcoming anniversary event. Last time out we talked about the history of the event and what patterns have formed over past iterations of the anniversary celebration. Today, we break down the master list given back in April 2021 and try to figure out who the killer will be for DBD's 6th anniversary. On screen now is a representation of nearly every single name that was listed in DBD's player survey. While any of these properties could technically come to the game this June, I believe some are far more likely than others. There are 55 licenses in total, but only one of them will make the cut for the upcoming event. As a quick aside, I didn't include the short section the survey had on comic book characters. This is in no way a slight on comics, more just that none of them really seemed remotely realistic outside of Spawn, a property that already seems doubtful. Sorry if this bums anybody out, I just wanted to address it at the start so nobody could say I forgot. For what it's worth, if it is a comic book character, I almost guarantee you it's Spawn, but I don't think that's happening. Because it would take forever to address 55 properties individually, I'm going to save time and eliminate the likely imposters right off the bat. Keep in mind, everything in this video is strictly conjecture and in no way represents empirical data. 3 names listed on the board have already joined the DBD roster, those being Resident Evil, Hellraiser, and The Ring. While I suppose it's not technically impossible for one of those licenses to get a second DLC, especially Resident Evil, I don't think such an outcome is likely. Let's go ahead and strike those 3 from the board. While we're at it, let's eliminate the choices that seem to have been thrown in there despite having almost no chance of showing up in the game. Notable examples of this would include properties like Rambo, The Mummy, Devil May Cry, Doom, Final Fantasy, Half-Life, Metal Gear Solid, Persona, Portal, and Tomb Raider. Sadly, that also means this is the part of the video where we say goodbye to the idea of a Scooby-Doo chapter. The world is just not ready for that yet. Moving swiftly ever onward, we still have a lot of movies to get rid of. Let's thin the herd a bit. Firstly, I want to get rid of Carrie, The Grudge, and Poltergeist. Having just added Ringu Sadako, I don't think any of those licenses are going to be coming to the game anytime soon. No more Psychic Teens or television sets for the time being, please. I also doubt we see the less popular properties mentioned here, and that means I'm going to have to cut the likes of Kingdom, Lovecraft Country, One Missed Call, and Sweet Home. There are also a few listed here that just don't make much sense. For example, why add Prometheus instead of the much more popular Alien? How many people still care about Supernatural? I may be wrong and may end up hearing about this in the comments, but I feel like a lot of that fan base moved past the show a long time ago. And then you have properties like The Babadook, The Exorcist, The Fly, and Train to Busan that are excellent films, but make no sense as DBD chapters. Let's cut them too. Now that we're down to a more manageable number of movies, let's move on to anime. Perhaps controversially, it is my belief that this category was most likely added to gauge interest for far future DLCs, and doesn't really represent what we're going to be seeing in the immediate future. If we're going to see an anime chapter, I think it's more likely it comes for the 7th anniversary than the 6th. For the sake of argument, I will leave a few on here and consider their merits later. Let's eliminate Ajin, Demi-Human, Attack on Titan, Demon Slayer, Full Metal Alchemist, Jujutsu Kaisen, Parasite, Psycho-Pass, and Tokyo Ghoul. Feel free to tell me in the comments how perfectly I pronounce those names. I can't wait. Next we have the video game category, which is the hardest to narrow down. A lot of these properties could hypothetically work, so this seems like where I'm most likely to get some egg on my face. At the risk of looking stupid, I am going to eliminate Alan Wake, Castlevania, and Control. That's a lot of properties down. Now for the hard part. In narrowing down the Sweet 16, we need to look for specific disqualifiers. For example, Matthew McCote has called Pennywise a dream chapter for DBD and directly expressed his interest in adding the character. With that in mind, it does stand to reason that if DBD were to add a Stephen King property, they'd likely start with it and not The Shining. It also doesn't make a lot of sense to bet the house on The Last of Us, seeing as the series is exclusive to PlayStation, and there's no telling if Sony would be willing to let other gamers play with their toys. Let's strike those 2 properties from the list. Hard as it is, this is also the part of the video where I cross out Death Note and Hellsing. While I think that an anime chapter may well come to the game at some point, I don't believe this is that point. Still, if it's going to happen, I do believe it will be one of these 2 properties. Maybe next time, friends. Also, as a quick side note, I don't watch a lot of anime, so if I have made a terrible mistake in including either of those, I apologize. I don't know much about it, but that's kind of the point. I know very little about anime and I still know about Death Note, so I think that in terms of mass appeal, you definitely have something to work with there. But again, I don't think it happens this time around. Okay, cool. We're almost to the top 10. I already mentioned it in the last video, so let me go on and say I don't think we'll be seeing Until Dawn this time around. The game is fairly easy as a chapter to conceptualize, that is, as the game provides a recognizable killer, map, and enough survivors that even the legendary skins would be largely set in stone. In terms of accessibility, Until Dawn is a slam dunk. Despite this, I doubt the game is announced as the anniversary chapter. I believe it to be entirely possible that Until Dawn comes to DBD one day, but for now they're just far larger fish to fry. The same goes for The Evil Within, which is in almost the exact same position, just with even less fanfare. While it's easy to conceptualize a chapter where the Keeper is the killer and Sebastian is the survivor, there's just not enough clamor to make this an appetizing choice at the present moment. Closing out this portion, let's also eliminate The Thing. It may be one of the most iconic horror films of all time, and debatably my favorite horror film of all time, but adding this chapter would require an imposter mechanic, which I just don't see behavior doing. Because I'm really bad at math, we actually ended up with a final 9 instead of a final 10, so that's cool too. I could very realistically see any of these properties being added during the 6th anniversary. Each makes a compelling case in and of itself, and none of them would truly shock me, right? Like, they all do make sense as the upcoming chapter. As I look at the list of remaining properties, I can't help but feel like one of these things is not like the others. For whatever reason, I just don't think The Walking Dead belongs here. Sure, it's a massive franchise that would likely bring in new players, but I doubt it happens for several reasons. For one thing, the show is not what it used to be. While its numbers are still pretty impressive, they aren't close to what they were. The show has gone way downhill in terms of popularity and just wouldn't be the acquisition that it would have been a few years ago. There's also the issue of who the killer would be, as a walker isn't very intimidating. I'd assume they'd use Negan or the governor, but neither of those gel very well with the existing cast of killers. And then of course there's also the issue of Nemesis from Resident Evil. You could argue that having a zombie mechanic already in the game actually ups the chances of Walking Dead, but I would argue otherwise. I think that they would likely argue that, hey, zombies are already in the game, there's no need to go out and get more. For the sake of narrowing down our list, let's just do away with The Walking Dead. Because I don't want to keep you here all day, I'm going to cut 4 at once here, those being Alien, Predator, BioShock, and Dead Space. All 4 of these would be amazing chapters, but they do have their reasons to be doubted. As a franchise, BioShock has been long dead, and Predator has found nothing but failure in its recent outings, be they gaming or films. I don't have strong reasons for eliminating Alien and Dead Space, other than that there's been absolutely nothing to suggest that these franchises are going to happen, other than this survey. It would also be Dead by Daylight's first venture into sci-fi, which, look, I think they have to take that leap at some point, but it would be pretty notable if they did it here. For what it's worth, either of those chapters would make me extremely happy, and I hope they happen. Now we're down to the final 4, and I want to make a strong prediction. The Year 6 anniversary chapter will be one of these 4 licenses. I could be way off base. I could be wrong. I could look back at this in a few months and laugh at how wrong I was. But I feel good about this, or at least as good as somebody can feel when really taking a stab in the dark here. Let's explain the case for each of these 4 remaining licenses. Candyman makes sense on all levels but one. He's long since been rumored to have been in the works. Actor Tony Todd followed DBD on Twitter, the franchise recently received a reboot, and the killer has easy abilities to translate to DBD. The only issue I feel is that this would be a bit of a dud compared to past announcements. Now, let me be clear. I love the original Candyman. I think it's a great movie. I've watched it numerous times. It's really, really good. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. But can you honestly tell me that adding Candyman to Dead by Daylight would send the same shockwaves as adding Ghostface, Pyramid Head, or Nemesis? I think Candyman is on more equal footing with the likes of, say, Pinhead, and even then, I feel he's the less iconic of the two. In fact, if Candyman were added, I think he would be the second least recognizable licensed property, at least amongst the killers, probably only passing Amanda Young. And even then, the Saw property itself is more popular, it's just that Amanda as a character is probably less popular. Simply put, Candyman would be a big deal, but not a massive deal. I'm not saying it won't happen, but let's look at our other options first. Next we have Friday the 13th, and guys, honestly, what more do you want me to say about this? Jason Voorhees is one of the 4 faces of horror's Mount Rushmore. He's as big of a deal as a slasher can be, and DBD isn't entirely complete without him. Without doubt, this is the most monumental license Behavior could still possibly add. But is it going to happen? I'm not so sure. The lawsuit surrounding Jason's rights may have ended for the time being, but there's no way to know if it'll start up again. Until Victor Miller comes to some kind of compromise with Sean S. Cunningham, the threat of a renewed lawsuit will always loom over the franchise. Still, all of that being said, Behavior has worked through complex legal issues in the past, like when they managed multiple studios to get Ash Williams in the game. So, never say never. If there's ever been a time where Jason's addition was actually foreseeable, actually likely, actually doable, that time is now. And then we have the last two remaining licenses. Ironically, they couldn't be much less similar from one another, outside of one way. So, one's a novel/film franchise, the other comes from the world of video games. One has been speculated to join the game for years. The other didn't gain traction until a few months ago. One is nearly universally loved, while the other is a lightning rod for hot takes, both bad and good. One license is It, the other is Five Nights at Freddy's. For all of their differences, they both have one thing in common. They both make a lot of sense to be the upcoming chapter. I probably don't have to get into the details of Pennywise's links to DBD. It's been an open secret for multiple years now that more than one person behind the scenes at Behavior would like to see Pennywise added to the game. Given that the most recent remakes only serve to make the character more popular, there's little doubt that an It chapter would bring tons of eyes to the game. Having Pennywise, likely named something like the Deadlight, as the killer and two members from the Losers Club as survivors, plus a map set in the Derry sewer system, is the recipe for an exciting, well-received chapter. And it's not like theories for this chapter are without evidence, tangential as it may be. Matthew Makote did mention that he wanted balloons for the 6th anniversary, and the image posted to DBD's Twitter of Yoshi in a raincoat certainly calls to mind images of Georgie. None of those things are exactly smoking guns, but Behavior is famous for dropping subtle clues before big reveals, so don't count them out either. I know they sound ridiculous, but there's precedence for this kind of thing actually meaning something with Behavior. Of course, it wasn't just balloons that Makote said he wanted, but animal balloons. This has led some to speculate that the FNAF chapter may well be on its way. This would follow Behavior's recent anniversary trends, as it would make the third straight year Behavior added a massive video game franchise during the event. Add that in with the thunderous reception Springtrap received when some portions of the fanbase thought a previous chapter was going to be him and not Pinhead, and it starts to make sense that people would speculate the animatronic killer is a pending arrival. But what do I think? I've made the case for numerous chapters here today, but now I need to pick a side. I can't fence sit forever. Who do I think DBD will add during the 6th anniversary event, and who do I want it to be? Well, the short answer is there's no shortage of chapters I'd like to see this June. My personal picks would be American Psycho, The Shining, Alien, or Friday the 13th. But I'd be extremely happy with almost any license from this master list, and quite a few off of it. In terms of who I think will be joining the game in a few months, let me phrase it like this. My head tells me it's Candyman. There's just too much smoke to convince myself there's not a fire. And yet, I can't help but feel it's not him. I can't help but feel the upcoming chapter will not be Candyman, but instead, It. Pennywise's addition is long overdue, and right now makes more sense than any time in the past. Brand visibility is a massive factor in getting deals done, something Bruce Campbell mentioned when discussing why he wanted Ash in Dead by Daylight. It and It Chapter 2 were two of the most relevant horror films of the past decade, so they didn't need DBD to further the hype train. They were doing fine on their own. Now, though, the movies have ended, and no future projects seem to be in the works. So this would be a perfect time for Pennywise to get in on the action and earn the studio some more money. In discussing It, we're talking about the type of home run chapter that rarely comes along. The killer is extremely iconic. The survivors are well known enough that they can be added without paying for the actors' likenesses. The map would be unique and exciting, and there's desire both from the fans and the devs to get this one done. The only reason this doesn't happen is if either the right holders aren't interested, or Behavior has another license that it really wants to do for this event. There are plenty of potentially correct answers here, but my money's on Pennywise. That, or this will all have been for nothing and the Scooby-Doo chapter was legit all along. But what do you think? Let me know down below if you agree with my reasoning here, or if you just think I am the dumbest human being to ever live. I appreciate each and every one of you for taking time to watch this video, and if you're still here, hey, check out my Twitch. We stream at least 3 times a week. It's a good time. It's laid back. It's fun. Again, thank you so much for spending some time with me. I enjoy this community that has been built right before my eyes. I am touched by each and every one of you who has liked, subbed, and shown general support. I hope each of you is having a wonderful day whenever you're watching this. And until next time, bye friends.